Shalom to everybody out there. This is Damian Powell again from Yeshua Saves All. Many blessings to you all in the name of our Father Yahweh and His Son Yeshua. I have a important topic to talk about today, and I pray that you all will stick in and listen to the entire broadcast to see what it is that I have to say on this topic because it's one that he's been pushing me to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it because it's an important topic, and it's titled "Sunday Worship and the Mark of the Beast." So the question is, do Christians have to observe the fourth commandment, which says, "Remember the Sabbath day or the Shabbat to keep it holy"? Does it apply for the Jews only? Is this day more important to our Creator than we thought? Let us examine further and follow with me as we follow Yeshua, who is the way, the truth, and the life. The importance of the Sabbath day to the Elohim of Israel can be established with his original ancient language, the Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue that he used to speak the world into existence with. I touched on this on the other one about the topic that Satan is Lordgod in disguise, and the importance of the original language that Yahweh used and Yeshua used and the Ruach HaKodesh used to speak this world into existence. That original form is called the Odeo, which is a pictograph form, so like a picture of an olive, for example. The olive is an ox head, for example, that represents Yahweh and strength and headship. So there's nothing that Satan can do to distort his original language. So the reason why I bring that up because it gives the importance of the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day using the Odeo, and in Hebrew it reads from right to left. It is Sheen Beit Tau, and I'll explain that. Sheen is a picture of two front teeth, which is used to separate it to cut. Then you have Beit, which is a picture of a house. It represents family. It also represents Yeshua. And then you have Tau, which is two wooden sticks that the world Christians call a cross, and is used as a sign, as a signature, or to mark something. So when you combine these three words, spelling Shabbat in his original language, it reveals something very important to all creation. Okay, so here it is. Sheen, those who are separated from the world. Beit, those who belong to Yeshua, who are in Yahweh's house and family. And Tau, those who have Yahweh's mark, signature, and sign eternally for a moment in time. And you can learn a lot from that from listening to Alan Horvath, who's a great teacher on the audio. Now, if you put all these three words together that I just gave you, it says the Sabbath day for those who have been separated from the world, who belong to Yeshua, who are in Yahweh's house and his family, and those who have Yahweh's mark, sign, and signature on them. So this shows the importance of this special day because it is a memorial to our Creator forever, which is why Yahweh says in Exodus chapter 31, verse 13 through 14, Yahweh says, "And you speak to the children of Israel, saying, My Sabbath you are to guard by all means, for this is a sign, Tau, between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh, who Kadosh sanctifies you." So as you can see, He said the same thing in Exodus 31 that he revealed in his ancient language. You know, it shows the importance of his Sabbath day. And that language you cannot distort at all. So it's so beautiful that he, in his original language, he was relaying to the people that if you know me, if you want to be a part of me and my son, you keep the Sabbath day. And you belong to Yeshua and his family and in his father's house. You see the beautiful in that, the beautiful language and how important it is. So the Sabbath day is a set apart day that he recognizes as a sign between he and his people. Again, that's Exodus 31:13. Then what does that make Sunday, the day that 99% of the world goes to worship? It's a day that Satan used to mark his people, whether knowingly, through tradition, or unknowingly. Either way, it is his day. Now, stick with me and I'll explain that. We all know that Satan rebelled against Yahweh, and he wants believers in Yeshua to rebel against him, just as he and 1/3 of his angels did. He knows the importance of the Sabbath day, and he wants believers to rebel against his fourth commandment. Sabbath is Hebrew for rest, which falls on Saturday, starts Friday night sunset to Saturday night sunset. But the Hebrew word for Sunday is Yom Rishon. And nowhere in scripture does Yahweh or Yeshua say, remember the Yom Rishon to keep it holy, because they never changed it. So Satan attempts to take the worship away from Yahweh, even his set apart day, and counts on the fact that believers will say it doesn't matter, or I'm saved through grace alone, the law is done away with, once saved, always saved theologies, and none of them are scriptural at all. Think about it. Satan even tried to get Yeshua to worship him. So what is stopping Satan from getting people who say they believe in Yeshua from worshiping him? He's just going to go about it in an indirect manner. Like I said, and through tradition is a big one. Mankind is created in Elohim's image and likeness. And we, as his creation, remind Satan of Elohim, and he wants us destroyed. And with his pride wanting to be like Elohim, he wants all the worship, and is doing that on his day, Sunday, which is representation of Sun God. Sunday, Sun God. Now, I don't like saying God, but that just trying to relay the point so that people who are unfamiliar with what Elohim means is that. And Elohim means mighty ones, by the way. But that's exactly what Satan has done. The names of the week on our Gregorian calendar, all through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, are all names of pagan deities in Rome. And that's where Sunday comes from Roman Emperor Constantine, but I'll get into that a little later on. But the good news is that we all, or if anybody is worshiping on the wrong day, you can repent to Yahweh today, because his kindness and his mercy endures forever for those that revere him. But do not delay. Be obedient to our creator of the universe and free yourselves from the chains of sin and death through his son, Yeshua. We can do that today. So, how does Sunday relate to the mark of the beast? Isaiah chapter 14 through 13 says this: You said in your heart, which is Satan, I will ascend into the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of Elohim, and I will sit enthroned on the mount of the congregation on the sides of the north. It's a known fact that Satan wants to be worshipped as Elohim. Not only by the passage that I just read from Isaiah, but like I said, he tried to get Yeshua to worship him in the wilderness. So with that said, he tries to duplicate everything that Yahweh does with enough truth and then a lie to deceive you. But he will always come up short. For example, Yahweh's number is 7 for completion, and Satan's is 6 because he's always falling short. I know it's 666, but I'm showing the fact that 6 is a deceptive number. I know it's a number for man, but you can always see how Satan falls short when he's trying to duplicate everything that Yahweh and Yeshua does. For example, Yahweh has Shabbats. Satan mocks him and has Sabbaths. Yahweh has Passover. Satan has Easter. Yahweh has Feast of Tabernacles. Satan has Thanksgiving. Yahweh said, don't sacrifice your children, yet Satan requires them. I'm pretty sure you see where I'm going with this here. So look at it this way. As I shown in Exodus 31:13, Yahweh says that the Sabbath day is a sign between he and his people. All right? Right? So don't you as followers of Yeshua want to be his people? Of course you do. You love him because you go to church, you read your Bible. So of course you want to be his people. But we cannot miss out on this important fact that Yahweh is trying to convey to us. This is also confirmed in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 through 8, which says, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all of your being and with all of your might. And these words which I'm commanding you today shall be on your heart. And you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. Okay? The Hebrew pictograph, the odia of the ancient language, as I was explaining in the introduction, is for hand is the yod, which is a picture of an arm and a hand. Okay? So it's a picture of an arm and a hand, and it has to do with actions and work and keeping his word, his scriptures in front of you. Okay? And then resh is a picture of a man's head. It has to do with your thoughts. It has to do with what are your thoughts on serving Elohim or on wickedness and reading his word. This aligns perfectly with what Yahweh told Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. He says, Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. So Yahweh marks his people who keep the Sabbath, and his people bind his commands as a sign upon their hand and on their foreheads, frontlets between their eyes. So how does Satan mock this? As he always does. Revelations chapter 13, 16 through 17. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon the right hand or upon their foreheads. And no one shall be able to buy or sell except that he has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. You see how he mocked that? Because he wants to be like Yahweh. So if you don't have the mark of Satan, you will not be able to function without the RFID chip, which is that chip that's the size of a rice grain engraved into your right hand. And then if you don't worship on Sunday, which is what the New World Order is going to have implemented, the Roman Catholic Church admitted that they changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday. This is happened in history before. If you go back and look through history, you'll see that Roman Emperor Constantine was a pagan sun deity worshiper of Mithra, who saw a flaming cross in the sky. and he took it as his cue to convert to Christianity, but did not leave his pagan roots behind. So he merged the two religions together with Christianity and paganism and kept his Sunday worship intact, and believers followed. And then you also had Antiochus Epiphanes during the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, where he put Sabbath keepers and those who kept the Torah of Yahweh to death if they did not convert to his false religion or bow down to his false deities. There's a gruesome story of a mother who watched all 7 of her children being tortured and killed because they refused to disobey Yahweh's commandments. And she did not either. So she watched her 7 children be tortured in front of her. And then she died because they refused to take on a false religion. So the reason why I bring that up is that it's happened twice throughout history, or it's actually some more. But those are the two that I can bring up for the importance of this topic here, is that you can see the connection and the importance of the situation that Satan has done throughout history as he persecuted the people of Yahweh for keeping his day holy and has gotten his henchmen to enforce it. However, Yahweh has always kept a remnant. I make this point to say that it will happen again with the New World Order, the one world religion that is trying to be implemented. So the Sabbath day is the truth. And as I said before, in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun that Solomon wrote. So what he's trying to do is take away the Sabbath day and bring in his own day, because that is his assignment between he and his people. Okay, and will force people to either bow down to Sunday worship or be persecuted. You see what I'm saying? It brings back memories of the blue laws when I was growing up, where stores like U-Crops were closed on Sunday because they were honoring the sun deity that Roman Emperor Constantine brought in. It was illegal to work on that day. And I'm thinking, how come it's not illegal to work on the Sabbath day like Yahweh commanded? But like I said, Satan is always trying to pervert things and has gotten people to choose the wrong day. What does Yahweh have to say about this? Firstly, I would like to point out that most believers will tell you that they believe in the 10 commandments. However, when it comes to the 4th commandment, it is skipped over for some reason. That should set off an alarm to some people. Exodus chapter 20 verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it Kodesh, holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh Baruch blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Yahweh just explained that he blessed the Sabbath day, the 7th day of the week, and set it apart from all the other 6 days, so it is important. Yet believers will skip over this commandment and turn the 10 commandments into the 9 commandments. YESHUA said in his closing statements in the book of Revelations 22:19 that if anyone takes away from the scroll of the prophecy, Elohim will take away from that person any share of the tree of life in the holy city that are described in this book. Yet believers keep taking away from his words and commandments. And then Yeshua also says that in John 14:21-24, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So I exhort the world to start following Yeshua and love him by setting aside this day as he commanded. One of the most popular questions is the Sabbath day for the Jews? Well, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 2 says, Yahweh says, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed times. And appointed times are appointments that he wants to meet with you as his followers, as his worshipers. He says, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed times, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. Firstly, Yahweh says these are my appointed times to meet with his people. So they are personal days to him, saying my. He did not say that these are the Jewish appointed times. He didn't separate it. He said these are mine, these are personal, which is one of the biggest lies that Satan has told to get the world to celebrate his pagan satanic days. Like I said, and these appointed times are also called Shabbats. And I told you that Satan has his satanic ones called Sabbaths, which the world has celebrated, the Christmas, the Easter, and all those days. These holy days are for those who say they follow Yahweh and Yeshua and are joined one with Israel. And amongst all of these appointed times, like Passover, is the weekly seventh day Sabbath. He wants to meet with us every Saturday. So let us keep that appointment. There are so many blessings that come along with it. Okay? He wants people to be obedient and recognize that he will provide for you. He will give you provisions. You don't have to work on that day to get extra money. He will give you everything that you need as long as you keep his Sabbath day holy. But I would get into Israel being one later on in this broadcast. I want to show you how important that is. Even Abraham kept the Torah and the commandments. I know a lot of people miss this. Even Abraham kept the Torah, the first 5 books in the Bible, and the commandments before there ever was a Jew. The Jews came through one of the sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel named Judah. That's where Jews come from. So anyway, if you read Genesis chapter 26, verse 5, it says, because Abraham obeyed my voice, guarded my charge, my commandments, my laws, my Torah, my instructions. So as we can see, Abraham kept the commandments well before it was given in Exodus, which means that Yahweh's commandments are eternal. They're everlasting. They are forever. You see where I'm going with this? A lot of people think that they just came in the 10 commandments, but no, the Torah was already being followed and obeyed by Abraham in Genesis chapter 26, verse 5. Then we can also see in Exodus chapter 16, which is 4 chapters before the 10 commandments was given on Mount Sinai in Exodus 20. It reads, Exodus 16, verse 28. Then Yahweh said to Moses, how long will you refuse my commands or my instructions, my Torah? In other words, his commandments and Torah are forever. This is 4 chapters before Exodus 20 when Yahweh said that to Moses. So how would Moses know what he was referring to in Exodus 16 before he gave the commandments in Exodus 20? You see what I'm saying? Because his Torah is forever. His commandments are forever. And listen to this. Isaiah chapter 56 verse 6 says, also the sons of a foreigner, and that is a non-native born Israelite, one grafted in. Also the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yahweh to serve him, to love the name of Yahweh, to be his servants, all who guard the Sabbath and not profane it. And those who hold fast to my covenant, I shall bring them to my Kodesh, holy mountain, and let them rejoice before my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my altar, for my house is called a house of prayer to all peoples. So as we can see in this prophecy, Isaiah states that there are requirements that the foreigner, the non-native born Israelite, must do to be accepted by Yahweh, to be grafted in with Israel, which means that they cannot profane the Sabbath, which Satan says you can do by switching it to Sunday. Yahweh says you can't profane his Sabbath. You must love his name, which is Yahweh, and keep his covenant. There is no such thing as saying that you believe in him, but profaning the Sabbath according to this prophecy. And Paul drives this home in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11 through 19, which reads, therefore remember that you once in the flesh. That means you were a non-native born Israelite, called a Gentile at that time. But when you accept the commandments of Yahweh, as I just explained, keeping the Sabbath and his commandments, you are no longer a Gentile. Okay? But I'll continue the reading. Who are called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at one time you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no expectation without Elohim in the world. But now, in Messiah Yeshua, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of the Messiah, HaMashiach. For he is our peace, who has made both one, and having broken down the partition of the barrier, and having abolished in his flesh the enmity of the law, of the commandments and dogma, which is man-made law, so as to create in himself one renewed man from the two, thus making peace, and completely restore favor both of them unto Elohim, and one body through the stake, having destroyed enmity by it. And having come, he brought as good news peace to you who were far off, and peace to those near, because through him we both have access through the Father by one Ruach, Spirit. So then, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but a fellow citizen with the saints and members of the house of Elohim. To break that down, Paul is saying that Gentiles were once far off from the promise and covenant, but through the blood of Yeshua, they are now grafted into the promise and are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens of Israel. Therefore, making you an Israelite and not separate person that they call in Christianity the replacement theology, saying that they're separate from the Israelites. No, you are all one, being a grafted in member of the Israelites and promises, which means that you must obey the commandments in Torah, because you are recognized now as a native born Israelite. You are a citizen of Israel, grafted in, making you an Israelite. When we read Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 through 3, we read that Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and then he rested on the seventh day from all of his work. Right? Then we read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 5, it says, now no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up. For Yahweh Elohim had not sent the rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. There was no man to till the ground. Then in verse 7 it says, and Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils breath of life, and that man became a living being. So based off of these passages alone, we can see that during creation, Yahweh created and rested on the seventh day before he made man. Therefore, there was no Jew or Gentile on the earth. No such thing.